development of Muslim jurisprudence, that's something different. But this is something spurious to me. The fourth objection is the negative experience of the implementation of democracy in Muslim countries. That is something we talked about. Not a matter of rejection, though. The good ways. We have negative experience of imams teaching our kids how to read the Quran in the mosque. Do we ban the classes? No, we don't. Do we hire somebody else sometimes or take the teacher to task? We do. So there are negative experiences of democracy being rolled out in certain parts of the world in a way and shape and manner. Deviousness to torture and even war. You can question, you can protest, you can change, you can prevent. But what do you want to replace it with? So if religion and secularism have to work together, the key is to make it practicable. And the real thing, the real job is, how do we actually make a system of life practicable for the Muslims in other parts of the world that allows them to actually realize those goals of justice and mercy and consultation and consensus forming and so forth. But that's for the Muslim world. To what extent am I supposed to be involved in that as a citizen of this country? We have our own worries, own priorities at home. When my neighbor lies hungry and I'm going out there, traveling around the world, feeding people. Is that Islamic? I come along and talk about Maryam, from cartoon figure, becoming a Christian in Indonesia. And I'm not worried about the Muslims becoming faithless next door. It sounds cynical, it sounds like almost bitter, but this is the fact. For far too long, we have stayed in this country and worried about foreign ideologies, Muslim Brotherhood and Hizb ut-Tahrir and so many ideas, all feeding into our consciousness of how to be Muslims in Britain. No. We are Muslims in Britain with our own people, own cultural constraints, or freedoms. And Islam allowed us to be wherever we are in the world at any time and place. We said so till the end of time because it cuts across all boundaries. It's transcendental. And those are false slogans if it's not made practicable. To make it practicable, we just need two things. One is to deal with the situation where we have remained in stasis, fossilized as it were, always referring back to past scholars and classical heritage, not as a heritage to learn from and then adapt, but simply to go back to. That is entirely wrong in my understanding. And that's what changed me. Because yes, for a long time we have waved the flag of, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said this, and Bin Baz says that, rahimahullah, Bin Baz says that, and he quotes from Ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah, said, yes, we have done all of this, we're not interested anymore. Because it's not adding any value anymore. I don't get up in the morning and I wonder about, is he an Ashari, is he a Mu'tazili? I don't. I get up in the morning and I wonder, my child going to school, she didn't come home on time the other day, I called the police. That's what I'm worrying of. Why isn't she home? I phoned on the mobile and some bloke answered the phone, hello, like that. Oh, what's this? Who are you? Why is this bloke answering me? That is what worried me. I didn't think of Syria. I didn't think, although I have fought in Afghanistan, I have fought in Burma, I've done lots of, I didn't think of Syria. I'm thinking about who's on the phone with my daughter. Now that's one personal experience happened last week. A whole day is more or less like that. My project plan, and boss is coming around, I'm going, what's for lunch tonight, or dinner tonight. It's not this. Make it something which counts. What makes me a good person? A democracy and the secular management of the religious state has allowed me to preach or to preserve my faith without interfering or imposing on others and taking away their freedoms or causing friction and dissension in the community. The second thing is secularism itself has to be something which is not hard. Because we can give dictionary definitions of what is secular, what is secularism, and there's no point in that. Because there is a branch or a school of thought which attaches secular thinking with atheism. If it's going to be atheism, it's not going to be workable. So we have to give in a bit and adapt, adopt, and so forth, without sacrificing the main tenets of faith or principles. On the other hand, it can't be atheistic secularism. Because if you impose that on us, we'd rather die witnessing the one God than live in a democracy. And I can say that quite openly, in emotive terms like that. You can tie me up and shoot me dead, and saying La ilaha illallah, because I have no problem with that. I'd rather do that than say I'll be an atheist and live under a secular democracy. because you have not allowed me to be faithful to God, I believe, determines my eternity, perdition or success. So there is encouragement for pluralism. Give me a time. How much? It's over, isn't it? Okay, 2 minutes then. Thank you. There is encouragement for pluralism in the Quran when it says, to each amongst you we have prescribed a law and an open way. Each amongst you. If God had so willed, He would have made you a single people. But His plan is to test you in that which He has given you. And there are verses like that. There are verses to consider in terms of how Muslims should accommodate other faiths. There are verses to consider how Muslims must not allow desecration or destruction of other religious places of worship. There are verses mentioned about how we are supposed to be open to knowledge and wisdom from wherever we find it, or hadith, teachings like that. The Muslims constituted only 15% of the population in Medina after the migration. And you know of the pact, the compact they made with the Jews and the other people there in terms of how to run that locality, if you like. Very small percentage of the Quran actually deals with law. Almost the whole bulk of it, 29 out of 30 sections, you can say, deal with to be a moral person. Now, how are we doing morally in this country? Whatever setup, secular democracy, pluralist society, or a dictatorship, tyranny, under tyrannies we're living, how are we actually appearing in front of God? What sort of heart is He looking at? Sincere? Is it well-meaning? Is it helpful, charitable? Does it empathize with human suffering? Does it want the great goals of providing people with relief? Or is it stuck in some kind of medieval mindset where the hate overcomes the rational thinking? So, this is what we have. And finally, just to finish off, inshallah, I just want to mention one hadith. Just one hadith. This is what the Prophet had once mentioned, peace be on him. I'd like to finish with this because this shows the whole discussion of living as a Muslim in any setup revolves around this neighborliness, and this is what this is about. That one of the companions, he came to the Prophet, peace be on him, and asked him about how can he be saved from sin and how can he be known as doing well. How do I know I'm doing okay? As a Muslim, of course, as a companion, a disciple of the Blessed Messenger, peace be on him. Ya Rasulullah, how can I know that I have done well? And so the Messenger of Allah, is Musnad Ahmad, by the way, he said, when you hear your neighbor say you have done well, you have done well. I would ask my brothers and sisters, Muslims in my sharing my same faith, what is our reputation? Don't blame it all on the media. That's crass. Media maybe are like ravenous culture, sitting there waiting to pick on some problems and bloat it out for sensationalism. But no, really, you think we're all perfect angels walking the street, caressing people with comfort and comforting them. No. What is our reputation amongst the people? Whether in terms of them knowing of what do Muslims actually believe in? What do they stand for? What are their contributions? How do they engage? What do they take part in? How many Muslim school governors? How many charity organizations in the UK? Over 100,000. How many of them have membership from Muslims? It's not about self-flagellation or hanging out dirtily out in public. We have to take stock of this before God. That's the introspection we have to have. I'm talking about secular democracy and Syria and Palestine. My neighbors know nothing about Islam, and if they do know something about Islam, it's all the small things they have learned from the media, and I think the media can be blamed for my job done. No. Media has done what it wanted to do. When you hear your neighbors say you have done well, you have done well. And when you hear them say you have done bad, they have done bad. So that is the hadith. We have the goals, we have the principles, we have the ayat in the Quran, we have the entire heritage of Muslim scholars, but today we have Muslim scholars and teachers and gifted people with their intellect and their hearts as faithful people. They need to look at all this and then understand what really is our picture in front of God before they talk about how they must stand up for God on some superficial understanding of what secularism must mean, atheism, democracy must mean is ruled by the mob, and it's just crass talk. Anyway, may God guide me and God guide you. May He protect us all for anything wrong I have said. I do talk sometimes a bit blunt and sometimes get carried away. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from anything unbalanced and mistaken I've said and give us the goodness of what we mentioned.
آمين بارك الله فيكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك جزاكم الله خيرا. Thank you.
I think we'll try to aim for a few questions. I just forgot to mention as well that today is also International Peace Day, which is usually on September 21st, which was adopted in 1981, and it's always on a Friday, and it's to commemorate the UN. It was a UN resolution that passed it to commemorate the meeting of the UN General Assembly. So I think it fits in with quite a good timeline that we are discussing how Islam and secular democracy reconcile with one another. I'll be taking the questions, and please keep it concise and keep it pointed, and no statements, but a question is appreciated. And if anyone has a question, raise your hand, and I'll try to come to you. So, does anybody have a question, or do I need to start the first one? Because I think there were a lot of interesting things over there. And okay, I think I'll go with the first question. I was struck by how powerful your talk was, and I feel in a way that despite what you say that the media in this country is, we shouldn't blame them, but I do feel that the moderate Muslim isn't heard enough in the British society. And I would just want to ask you very quickly, is that it's, the litmus test that is given towards Muslims since post 9/11, I would argue that a lot of it is a function of Islamophobia. We don't demand, I speak as a non-Muslim by the way, we don't demand of our other minorities or majorities any sort of litmus test or Tebet test, so to speak, unless they happen to be either Pakistani ethnically or Muslim religiously. So I would also argue that much as you say integration is a one-way process, much as Muslims in Britain need to delineate their Britishness, but also in a way Britain has to make some sort of space for Muslim identity.
Now, the first point is about the media. What I'm trying to do is, of course, there's misrepresentation, and sometimes the media are almost unmerciful, cruel in how they pick on the Muslims, as it were, when similar kind of stories could be found in other communities, but they target Muslims, it seems, because it's topical, sensationalism to sell, and they have their economic interests as well. What I'm trying to do is to get us to put it on the other side of the balance. I think maybe too far to the other side, is to get us to realize that we have become accustomed to almost always seeking the blame elsewhere. And I'm trying to reverse that a little bit. I'm saying that there are always going to be, if you like to think in those terms, evil or Satan or the devils and enemies, and they will not try to give you an easy ride. So when they're always trying to look for opportunities to misportray you or to put you down or paint you in darker colors, if we had enough light, they would not be able to smother that or to snuff it out. And I don't believe at this stage that I'm not talking about Pakistan and Bangladesh, I'm talking about in Britain, we Muslims have generated enough light of our own because now it's just like moaning to me that yes, media is giving us a tough time. And yeah. But if we had sufficient light and a strength of our own based on our contributions, whether it's establishing charitable institutions to community work, however it might have been, and we had enough time, I think, that's third, fourth generation Muslims there. 60% of the Muslims in Britain are born in Britain, and 60% of those are of Pakistani extraction. So that's just the rough statistics. We can make a lot of marvelous, remarkable, fantastic changes if only we would get out of that mindset of seeking to blame others and a little bit of this victim mentality. People have gone through these things. Irish have done, Jews have done, and as I said, I said that on purpose. The Jews have suffered much, much more, and it's still so regrettable that amongst ourselves, people like my colleagues who are so still anti-Semitic in their language, and we don't make anything of it. In our books, it's there. Recent fatwas. When I wrote that paragraph, I was quoting from Shaykh Sudais. Shaykh Usama would know, Shaykh Sudais. Translating from Shaykh Sudais' talk, the Jews. A grand Muslim scholar to come and just use the word the Jews, we don't like him when they say the Muslims. That's the first point. So I agree with you. You are right. There is an unfair representation of Muslims, which is for disadvantage. But we need to get out of that. The second point you mentioned was, remind me, I can't remember. I'm getting too old now.
about British society.
With integration, yeah, I didn't say it's a one-way process. It can never be. In fact, all the council meetings I have, I'm always saying to them that it has to be two-way. There has to be not just accommodating, but in terms of actually, it's like somebody comes to your home and is going to stay for a very long time. You teach the guest how to become part of the family, from even learning table manners to, okay, we get up at 8 in the morning, and by the way, and so that can filter down to, no, it's not just a citizenship class, and it's much more.